Could Lucas Giolito's biggest contribution to the Red Sox be to potentially lure Braves left-handed starter Max Fried to Boston? We'll discuss. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Obstructed View Baseball Podcast presented by Beyond the Monster. I'm Chris Henrik, and I'm joined by Jamie Gatlin. And before we get into it, Jamie, just want to make sure everybody heads on over to Spotify, like and subscribe to this podcast, and also be sure to check out To the Show We Go Baseball Podcast on YouTube, as well as on Spotify, and all of our content at beyondthemonster.substack.com. So, Jamie, we're going to talk a little of Lucas Giolito and Max Fried's friendship, and maybe how that might potentially bridge a gap for him to come to Boston. Just your quick thoughts on the possibility of maybe Max Fried being the Red Sox top free agent pitching target. Wow, easy for me to say.
I think he would be a good ad. I mean, you have him, Giolito, Houck as your front three. I feel like that makes the rotation a lot deeper. You can move guys like Crawford kind of back to more the 4 or 5 role. I think he'd be a great ad, especially in the top when they need kind of more arms you can put in the top 3 spots.
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret the Red Sox are in need of additional starting pitching as they head into this offseason, particularly high-end starting pitching. And, you know, the Red Sox may have a secret weapon in Lucas Giolito to potentially bridge a gap and lure Max Fried, to the Boston Red Sox. Now, before we go any further, I'm fully aware that just because 2 players are best friends or really close friends, at the end of the day, it comes down to dollars and cents. It's going to come down to John Henry wanting to invest the years and dollars it's going to take to get uncomfortable and bring in a pitcher of his caliber. Last time he did that, it was David Price, the 7-year deal to bring him to Boston. Ultimately, it helped lead the Red Sox to a World Series, but they've been really gun shy ever since on extending dollars and years to starting pitching from the free agent standpoint. I mean, so it's really the onus is gonna ultimately be on him. But look, there is that link, and there's no reason to not try to talk about that link. Both players have talked about since they were 17 years old, potentially playing on the same team. They went to high school together. They pitched together. Oh, by the way, they also had another guy who's pitching in the World Series on their team and in their rotation in high school, and Jack Flaherty, by the way, a free agent and could be a Red Sox target if they don't potentially land a guy like Max Fried and they want to maybe go to the second tier of starters on the market. But Giolito has been open in public, talking on the Baseball Isn't Boring podcast with Rob Bradford about how he's talked to Fried about coming to Boston. I think you're right. Having a guy like Max Fried lead the Red Sox rotation, you really do begin to slot everybody down correctly. You follow that up with, Tanner Houck, Brian Bayo, Carter Crawford, and a returning Lucas Giolito. That's a pretty good 5, but it's not enough. And if they're going to be competitive next season, I don't think Max Fried is enough. They're going to have to add more to the starting rotation in addition to him, and we've seen exactly why. The Red Sox were decimated with injuries, and it's not just them. Other teams also lost arms over the course of the season, but from this perspective, the Red Sox, they lost key members to their rotation, and they somehow held it together. But they haven't had a true ace in a really long time, and Max Fried would present that ace. My concern, though, Max Fried has only thrown 180 innings or more one time in his career, and that was in the 2020 season when he finished second in the Cy Young voting. Does investing years in big dollars free agent, by the way, who's going to enter his 31 age season next year, does that concern you at all, considering that the Red Sox are looking for strike throwers and they're looking for guys who can eat innings?
A little bit. I feel like you saw last year their depth wasn't enough to overcome that. They had some nice guys in the minors like Fitz, Hunter Dobbins. But, Fitz only got a small taste last year. So having a guy that is injury history is kind of a little worrisome. I feel like you could probably add some options to that deal to kind of alleviate the risk and just go by, not by year, but, if he's healthy, the option. So I feel like I would kind of work in a contract that has those things accounted for to kind of protect yourself if, injuries do continue. Like you said, innings limit isn't high. Last year, 29 starts, but only 170 innings. That ace you're going to need someone who can go 200, you can count on to be out there 33 or 4 times a year.
Yeah, there is some injury history with Fried. Like many pitchers, he has undergone Tommy John surgery. That was back in the 2015 season. He did miss the whole year. Generally, once a guy has that, they're pretty much good. There's rare occasions guys go and have Tommy John a second time. But he's been relatively solid throughout his career. His 2002 season was solid. 14-7, 2.48 ERA, third in the National League, 10th lowest in Atlanta franchise history from an ERA standpoint. He made 30 starts, 185 and a third innings with 170 strikeouts. So if that's the production that the Red Sox could get, you can live with that. The only thing is how can he get another 1 or 2 starts added to those totals to maybe surpass the 200 innings mark. That's, to me, I would say is like the gold star. If you can kind of achieve that, signing him to the money that it's going to take in the years that it's going to take. And if he pitches less than 180 innings, at that point, you've signed him by name and his name recognition versus what he can do on the mound. But I think that the risk is there. Now, look, last year he missed time he was hampered with a left hamstring injury. He had a strained left forearm. He was then put on the 60-day injured list, activated back in August. Finished the year in 2023 with an 8-1 record with a 2.55 ERA. So there is some injury concern, but that's what you're going to get with every single pitcher that's going to be on this market. Maybe with the outside of, a guy like Corbin Burns, but not bad, overall. If you can get the 2022 season of Max Fried and a lot of what he did this year, I think you might be cooking with something. Some things that I think will excite Red Sox fans, especially if you talk nerd from that standpoint, when you're, looking at either Baseball Savant or you're looking at Fangraphs. 95th percentile for average exit velocity. He's in the 89th percentile for barrel, 81st for hard hit, a 96 for ground ball. The only thing that does lack is his fastball velo is at 93.8 miles an hour. That's what it averaged. That was in the 45th percentile, 52nd percentile for chase percentage, 39th for whiff, and 52nd for K percentage. So there are some numbers that maybe you put him in the Breslow and Andrew Bailey laboratory, you might be able to unlock some things and maybe get him to the next level. That's a possibility.
Yeah. I think good thing with him too is just his track record. He hasn't had an ERA above 3 or in the 4s since 2019. Since that's been 2.25, 304, 248, 255, 325. So the ERA is probably be like mid 3s, which is good. And then last year batters hit 226 against him, when the year before they hit 242. So there's some really good numbers there, especially considering this past year, double the start total after he was injured last year, and hitters hit 20 points less than the year before.
The other thing that I found to be intriguing about Max Fried, and if fans are not well versed in him, because obviously he pitched in Atlanta, he throws 7 pitches within his arsenal. Obviously, fastball heavy. He threw a 4-seamer. He threw his curveball the second most, sinker, changeup, followed by super slider, cutter. The Red Sox were not a fastball happy team last season, so that would be a change for Max Fried, providing the Red Sox go with the similar game plan. However, there were times where the Red Sox, if they let their starters throw their fastball they looked pretty dominant at times. You have to wonder that maybe some of the second half woes that the pitching staff had, one was were they tired because they hadn't pitched like they had. Bayo, Tanner Houck, all through more innings and starts than they did the previous year. Cutter Crawford, obviously he went 32 starts. So the Red Sox are going to need to get these guys conditioned to go deeper into the season again. But I wonder if it will be a change for a guy like Fried if he was to come to the Red Sox, where Andrew Bailey is more reliant on some of the secondary pitches, followed up with the fastball. I wonder if that's something that Fried would be open-minded to outside of the money and the years he would get on a contract.
Yeah, I feel like it would be fun to watch. I mean, we saw for the first parts of this year, it worked for Crawford. We saw stretches from their young pitching where Bailey's method worked before they kind of broke down. I feel like a guy with Fried who's had the success that he's had in the majors, that would be a lot of fun to watch. And if anyone's going to get the best out of his stuff, it's going to be Bailey. I feel like even in the minors, too, you saw a lot of good things from the Red Sox pitching prospect from the new pitching plan that was implemented. So I feel like if Bailey got his hands on him, that would be a really productive relationship.
So at the end of the day, look, it doesn't hurt having Lucas Giolito be in the corner and in the camp of Max Fried, trying to recruit him to Boston. There have been a lot of successful, two of them that come to mind, recruiting stories of players who've had really good relationships to get him here in Boston. One of those was Pedro Martinez recruiting David Ortiz to the Boston Red Sox. And obviously the rest is history. And the other is actually Craig Breslow and Andrew Bailey. Both those guys played on the Red Sox together. They used to talk about in the bullpen what it would be like for Breslow to run a team and maybe Bailey be his pitching coach. By the way, that's now a real thing. But at the end of the day, there's not a lot of control these two players have, because the Red Sox are going to want to, one, extend the offer, years and dollars that is going to make sense to Max Fried. And Max Fried's going to want to have to believe and that the Red Sox are truly looking to contend, that there isn't going to be any more of this, hovering around third, fourth place like they've done. How close are the prospects? Are they truly close to taking the next step? And is Craig Breslow serious about his team taking the next step in 2025? So at the end of the day, the Red Sox have the means to get it done. They have a good young core in place. He would definitely highlight a rotation that was pretty good last year, all things considered. It comes down to John Henry, then it comes down to Breslow, and hopefully from there the rest is history. If you have any other last thoughts on Max Fried before we close this out and stick under our new 15-minute cap?
I just think it's going to be interesting to watch. He's going to be a guy that's in high demand. The Red Sox aren't going to be the only team that's going to be trying to sign him. So it's going to be interesting to see, like you said, if Matt Henry can kind of put his money where his mouth is and be aggressive for a guy like that. When there's probably going to be at least a half dozen teams trying to sign him. Yeah.
Yankees, Braves, obviously. Phillies, Orioles, Dodgers are a handful of teams that immediately come to mind. Houston Astros are another team that I think could be very much in the market. I am never now going to rule out the San Diego Padres, who, by the way, once had Max Fried. They drafted him. So there's going to be teams. It's going to be competitive. I think the first, domino that's going to fall would have to be Corbin Burns. So that way he kind of sets the market and Max Fried kind of has an idea. He's, in my opinion, I don't think he gets close to the Corbin Burns money, but he's a very good 1A, 1B. Make sure you head over to Spotify and subscribe to the Beyond the Monster channel for this podcast, To the Show We Go, and the other programs that we have. Head on over to beyondthemonster.substack.com for all of our content that drops daily.